So, hello everyone. Okay, and now we know that the sound is on when you start to stream and then there is still a slide. Yeah, well, I'm used to the back good old days when we had an intro with music, but they don't invest in us so much now. Okay, anyway, it was an amazing North American Congress for those of you that were participating during the weekend in what happened in New Jersey. So it was an amazing annual Congress, very great students and friends that got together. So that was pretty awesome. And now we're on lesson number 5, right? So in the first 4 lessons, we actually gave the background, okay? Is there a free choice? Are we completely controlled by nature? If we are controlled by nature, why do we appreciate so much the freedom, the concept of free choice or freedom in general? And also we've talked about how we work, how we operate, how we can change certain things in ourselves by habits and which things we cannot change, and how the environment works like separately from us, etc., etc. Now we're going to go deeper into the concept of free choice. So if you have the book Kabbalah for the Students, we're on page 383. If you don't, oh, this shirt is cool. It's like you can see through it. Psh, I feel like a ghost. Okay, so if you have the book, we're on page 383. If you don't, just you have the link in the description box. You can just go there and Control F, free choice, title. However, when we examine these 4 factors, meaning the source, the cause and effect, or the unchanging conditions of cause and effect of the source that relate to the source itself, the changing factor, the changing cause and effect of the source that change in quantity and quality through the engagement with the external environment and the external environment. 4. We find that although our strength is not enough to face the first factor, the source, we still have the ability and the free choice to protect ourselves against the other 3 factors, by which the source changes in its individual parts and sometimes in its general part as well, through habit, which endows it with a second nature. Okay, so this is one of the most powerful tools that Kabbalah is talking about, the power of a habit. And also modern science actually comes to that in later years, in like the past 5 years, I would say. I don't know when I don't remember when I start seeing studies about it. But a habit is like by trying to enforce specific actions in time and space in a continuous kind of way, we are capable of changing our more internal qualities or characteristics. And this is like a game, that I'm playing something and I become the game. The environment is a factor. This protection means that we can always supplement in the matter of choosing our environment, which are the friends, books, teachers, and so on. It is like a person who inherits a few stalks of wheat from his father. From this small amount, he can grow dozens of stalks through his choice of the environment for his source, which is fertile soil with all the necessary minerals and raw materials that nourish the wheat abundantly. There is also the matter of the work of improving the environmental conditions to fit the needs of the plant and the growth. For the wise will do well to choose the best conditions and will find blessing, and the fool will take from whatever comes before him and will thus turn the sowing to a curse rather than to a blessing. Okay, so this is a very important, again, it's very similar to the habit thing, actually in complete contradiction to a lot of other methods, psychological or semi-spiritual or quasi-spiritual, whatever you want to call it. The work is actually not or I would say the concentration of the work is not actually internal, although it is called internal work. But the focus is external, because we take as given the fact that we have certain characteristics, certain self, desires, what we define as pleasure. These are all consequences or a result of what was before me and what is around me, like circumstances and genetic heredity. I hope I pronounce it right, if I remember the word. These are trying to change these or fighting those things directly is like fighting windmills. It's fruitless. And the only way, and a person can waste 98% of his energy on that and come to nothing. And the only way to actually be more efficient is to focus your efforts externally, meaning that I want to choose the right environment, I want to improve the environment, I want to set habits in times and space in my calendar or whatever towards my environment in order to bring a change inside of me. This is a much easier way. It's like a miracle. It's like you're working one way, one place, and then you have a result in another place. And then the question is, so why do we call it internal work? Because it's about internal change, and we want to scrutinize what we feel and what we think, and do we change towards the goal, and do we come closer to it? But again, there is a place of work and there is a place of scrutinization. Okay, for those of you who saw the preface course, you can really relate to what we've talked there about the structure of the vessels. So there are heavy vessels, lighter vessels. The light goes into the lighter vessels, while the work and correction is in the more coarse. How do you pronounce that? I hoped I wouldn't need Google Translate today. Okay, but this is part of life. What? I'm writing it wrong. Course. Okay, I was close. Okay, course. I was close, but probably no English speaker would understand me without it. Course. Thus, all its praise and spirit depends on the choice of the environment in which to sow the wheat. But once it has been sown in the selected location, the wheat's absolute shape is determined according to the measure that the environment is capable of providing. So is the case with our topic, for it is true that the desire has no freedom. Rather, it is operated by the above four factors, and one is compelled to think and examine as they suggest, denied of any strength to criticize or change, as the wheat that has been sown in its environment. However, there is freedom for the will to initially choose such an environment, such books and such guides that impart to him good concepts. Okay, and this is bold for a reason. However, there is freedom for the will to initially choose such environment, such as books and guides that impart to him good concepts. If one does not do that, but is willing to enter any environment that appeals to him and read any book that falls on worthless books which are abundant and easier to come by, in consequence he will be forced into false concepts that make him sin and condemn. He will certainly be punished. Not be punished meaning by nature it's usually pain or lack of pleasure, okay, in the most internal translation. He will certainly be punished not because of his evil thoughts or deeds in which he has no choice in the present, but because he did not choose to be in a good environment, for in that there is definitely a choice. Okay, so now I define my future state by choosing an environment in the present. Therefore, he who strives to continually choose a better environment is worthy of praise and reward. But there too, it is not because of his good thoughts and deeds, which come to him without his choice, but because of his efforts to acquire a good environment, which brings him these good thoughts and deeds. It is as Rabbi Yoshua ben Parchia said, make for yourself a Rav, like a teacher or someone to look up to, and buy for yourself a friend. This is very important. Like you need to invest a lot of efforts to make yourself a student, meaning to understand that there are things that you don't know, that you need to not shut up physically, but internally, that you need to make space inside of you to receive from somebody else something, because the ego usually rejects everything and feels that he knows everything. And so this is like making yourself a Rav, and buying yourself a friend is because you are in your ego, and until you correct yourself, you don't sense, or you cannot feel your friends as yourself. So you need to invest in them, and to the extent that you invest in them, just like when you invest in a property, egoistically it starts to become important to you, just like when you adopt a child or you bring a child and you invest in them and you love your investment, because that's how we egoistically operate. And this is something that, these are qualities of the ego that we must learn to use in order to rise above it. Okay, let's see if we have questions, and if not, we'll move to the next title. Okay, fractal. Kabbalah is fractal. Yes, it is. Is there a Kabbalah for the student's book with a better cover, one that doesn't fall apart so easily? Well, Blake, I don't know. You should ask somebody over at Kabbalah Books. No questions here, no questions there. Okay, so I guess everything is clear. Let's continue. Okay, so we are now on the title. So these are important, very, very important practical things, okay? The necessity to choose a good environment. Now you can understand the words of Rabbi Yossi ben Kisma, who replied to a person who offered him to live in his town, and he would give him thousands of gold coins for it. Okay, this is a very important example. It's a very famous example about this huge Kabbalist that was offered a lot of money to go to another town and refused. Even if you give me all the gold and silver and jewels in the world, I will live only in a place of Torah, meaning in a place that I can draw the light and correct myself and attain adhesion with the Creator. These words seem too sublime for a simple mind to grasp. For how can he relinquish thousands of gold coins for such a small thing as living in a place where there are no disciples of Torah, while he himself was a great sage who needed to learn from no one? Indeed, a mystery. But as we have seen, it is a simple thing and should be observed by each and every one of us. For although everyone has his own source, the forces are revealed openly only through the environment one is in. This is similar to the wheat sown in the ground, whose forces become apparent only through its environment, which is the soil, the rain, and the light of the sun. Thus, Rabbi Yossi ben Kisma correctly assumed that if he were to leave the good environment he had chosen and fall into a harmful environment in a city where there is no Torah, not only would his former concept be compromised, but all the other forces hidden in his source, which he had not yet revealed in action, would remain concealed. This is because they would not be subject to the right environment that would be able to activate them. Okay, so every one of us who is a parent, it's very simple and clear for him that he needs to place his child in the right environment, with the right friends, the right books, the right stimulations for the child to fulfill his potential. And the same, but we forget that for us, and it's the same for us. Although we think that we are grown-ups and we are like full of ourselves, whatever. And here it's a very good example about this great Kabbalist that attained the highest how do you say, like degrees of the spiritual world, and still he understood that he's just like a seed, that where you plant it, that's what you'll get out of it. And this is why he focused his attention towards choosing the right environment. And this is very, very important. Okay. And the environment, okay, especially in our virtual world, when you don't have to move from place to place, environment is not actually the where I live. Environment is the set of values in the end that I observe every second, meaning what stimulations, what people, what things I'm in contact with every moment, and what do I value. And this is very important. I can be in a workplace and not be impressed by anybody because I don't value them. Just like a farmer goes into is working with his cows, he doesn't get concept from his cows or getting an idea, wow, that would be so cool to shit on the floors, on the ground, sorry for the bad example, or he doesn't envy the cows for walking naked because he doesn't appreciate them, okay, he doesn't see them as equal. So you can go to a workplace or you can be wherever and not be impressed by anything, and you can be connected virtually to something and appreciate that very much, and that would be your environment. And as we have clarified above, only in the matter of the choice of environment is man's reign over himself measured, and for this he should receive either reward or punishment. Therefore, one must not wonder at a sage such as Rabbi Yossi ben Kisma for choosing the good and declining the bad, and for not being tempted by material and corporal things, as he deduced here. When one dies, one does not take with him silver or gold or jewels, but only Torah and good deeds, meaning his internal attainment of the Creator. And so our sages warned, make for yourself a Rav and buy for yourself a friend. And there is also the choice of books, as we have mentioned, for only in that is one rebuked or praised. And in his choice of environment. Like this is like one of the most important parts, I think, what we've discussed in this lesson in practicing Kabbalah, like really practicing that. But once he has chosen the environment, he is at its hands as a clay in the hands of the potter. This is one of the concepts that the more you advance, the more you appreciate or understand the greatness of it. On one hand, how simple it is, on the other hand, how genius it is. It's very similar to other sciences, like sometimes in physics or mathematics, or even in our world with the things that we grew up with, that we took as a mantra or as giving, and only when we only when we grew up we saw the genius in them. Okay, so this is very important stuff. Do we have questions about that? So if we don't have any person or group that is centered, is that harmful or does it just mean we progress up the ladder at slow rate? Yeah, you progress slower, and actually today with the virtual, part of the reasons why we have the internet and all of these opportunities is because humanity is ready for spiritual development. These things didn't happen on their own. It's part of this general process of evolution. And so today, Blake, you have all the opportunities to be connected to an environment 24/7. You can go to this endless archive of KabbalahMedia.info, or you can go to KabU with this endless material, and you can all the time be connected to the right environment. That's actually what I do. When I have opportunity, I go with the with the earphone and connected to lessons or to other materials or things, and like that's the environment in the basic level. After that comes an environment that you can actually practice on what you do, and for this you need a 10, you need friends, but that's later on. Okay. No questions. Interesting. On a on a less important topics, we had a lot of questions, and on this, we have less. Maybe it's clear. The mind's control over the body. Some external contemporary sages, after contemplating the above matter and seeing how man's mind is but a fruit that grows out of the events of life, concluded that the mind has no control whatsoever over the body, but only life's events, imprint in the physical tendons of the brain, control and activate man, and a man's mind is like a mirror, reflecting the shapes before it. And although the mirror is the carrier of these shapes, it cannot activate or move the shapes reflected in it. Okay, so if you go deeper into the concept of free choice, you can actually say, okay, so each one of us is like a mirror, it's like a puppet, it's just a sensing organ which is pretty passive, being managed completely by the network in which he is embedded into. So is the mind. Although life's events, in all their discernments of cause and effect, are seen and recognized by the mind is nonetheless utterly incapable of controlling the body, to bring it into motion, meaning to bring it closer to the good, or to remove it from the bed. Okay, this is very similar to what one of the students wrote last lesson about the experiment they did, that your hand is actually going to something a few milliseconds before your mind recognizes that. This is because the spiritual and the physical are completely remote from one another, and there is no intermediary tool between them to enable the spiritual mind to activate and operate the corporal body, as has been discussed at length. But where they are smart, because they say there is no connection between spirituality and corporality. Okay. But where they are smart, they disrupt. Okay, so that's like their Achilles heel. Man's imagination uses the mind just as the microscope serves the eye. Without the microscope, he would not see anything harmful due to its smallness. But once he has seen the harmful being through the microscope, man distances himself from the noxious factor. Thus, it is the microscope that brings man to distance himself from the harm, and not the sense, for the sense did not detect the noxious factor. And to that extent, the mind fully controls man's body to avert it from bad and bring it near the good. Thus, in all the places where the attributes of the body fails to recognize the beneficial or the detrimental, it needs only the mind's whip. Okay, so what does he want to say here? This is very important. He wants to say, okay, so we choose an environment, and now the question is, are we completely passive in that or not? So he's saying no, because it's true that our mind and whatever brain, and feeling and desires are consequences of the environmental circumstances and all the chain that came before in this life, in previous life, or whatever. But we don't just react like cockroaches, for example, that if you hit, it reacts, it moves here, it moves there very fast. But we have this internal buffer mechanism that helps us scrutinize, and that's what this connects to what we've talked in the beginning of the lesson about internal work. It allows us to scrutinize and determine what is good and what is bad. And of course that it's through the environment and education and life experience, etc., etc. But we can actually determine or magnify what we see as bad, just like a microscope, and we can take this small thing and become sensitive to it, to what is bad. And this is what determines which person is more developed and which is less. The ability to recognize the bad. Just like if you're talking about a doctor, an expert, he can see in the same situation things that other doctors don't see, because he is very sensitive to it, and he can determine what danger or sickness or whatever can come from a thing that from specific data that another doctor doesn't give any meaning to, okay? And it's the same with an experienced chef, like an expert chef, that he discerns and senses different flavors in the same cake, in the same wine, in the same, I don't know, whatever, okay? So this is about being an expert, okay? It's the ability to recognize the evil, because once you know what is evil and you determine that this is bad, immediately, naturally, your will to receive won't come close to that, okay? It's just like, I don't know, if one of you stopped smoking. I remember myself 3 years ago, after 18 years of smoking, it's nothing but of course it's like hard, the physical addiction, blah, 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 but it goes away after 2 weeks, 3 weeks. But the hardest part is just determining that this is bad, that it's not good, and not justifying it by thousands of reasons. And for that, you need to go through a process. Or you can just come into a trauma and that's it. Bang, you have a cancer, you got a heart attack, and then either you go on or you stop, okay? And this is life. Either we get a trauma, we get a disaster that make us change, or we set ourselves into a process that in the end, through a habit, through what we've talked about, choosing the environment, in the end bringing us to recognize what is evil, that in the end we change. Furthermore, since man knows his mind, which is a true conclusion from life's experience, he can therefore receive knowledge and understanding from a trusted person, and can take it as a law, although his life's events have not yet revealed this concept to him. Okay, so if you want to be an expert, you start to identify who can be an expert that you can learn from, and then you can actually acquire through your self-nullification and your desire, you can acquire his or her experience. It is like a person who asks the advice of a doctor and obeys him even though he understands nothing with his own mind. Thus one uses the mind of others no less than one uses his own mind. Okay, so I don't have to go and study medicine and suffer for many years from the disease. I can just acquire somebody else's mind. Okay, let's finish this. As we have clarified above, there are two ways for providence to make sure certain that man achieves the goal, the good final goal, the path of pain or the path of Torah. This is what we've talked about, like through a lot of suffering that the will to receive must develop, or through education or yearning to the good or a good example. I don't know how you want to call it. All the clarity in the path of the Torah stems from that. For these clear conceptions that were revealed and recognized after a long change of events in the lives of the prophets and the men of God. There comes a man who fully utilized them and benefits from them, as though these concepts were events of his own life. Thus you see that one is exempted from all the orders one must experience before he can develop that clear mind by himself. Thus one saves both time and pain. Okay, this is like we say that we stand on the shoulders of giants. Okay, so we are capable of taking all what Kabbalists attain through the generation, because they actually prepared it for us, and to use that for our benefit, and by that shorten the time of development of ourselves, and also save a lot of pain. It can be compared to a sick man who does not wish to obey the doctor's orders before he understands by himself how that advice would cure him, and therefore begins to study medicine. He can die of his illness before he learns his medicine. So is the path of pain versus the path of Torah. One who does not believe the concept that Torah and prophecy advise him to accept without self-understanding must come to this conception by himself, by following the chain of cause and effect from his life's events. These are experiences that greatly rush and can develop the sense of recognition of evil in them, as we have seen, without one choice, but because of one's efforts to acquire a good environment which leads to these thoughts and actions. Okay, again, it's not that a person needs to do something on himself, to force himself, or like to try to make of himself some kind of shape by force, like with the clay, but he just needs to set himself in the right environment and everything happens as a miracle. Okay, last questions. We're actually out of time. Yeah, you can see through me. The path of Torah is not painful at all. If you know how to use it, it doesn't have to be painful. It's like, it's only painful if you don't have the right environment. Okay, so that's it for now. We'll meet again next time. Hopefully it will be Thursday morning Israel time or Wednesday evening New York time. See you then, and have fun. Bye bye.